here.
I may have to leave a little early, but I had an opening in my schedule. I decided to join for as long as I could stay. So,
Thanks, welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I'm going to get started with reading for our motion, and then we'll get into the meeting. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically, the African American History Initiative Committee needs to make certain findings for the record to evidence our compliance with all applicable laws. These motions address this compliance. First, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state your name and your location. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you hear each of your colleagues. So I'll begin. Mary Lipsey, co-chair.
Mary Lipsey's in Springfield and Braddock District.
Barbara Nath.
Barbara Nath in Reston, Hunter Mill District.
Tammy Marino.
Tammy Manarino, Mount Vernon District.
Ann Stuntz.
Ann Stuntz, Vienna, Virginia, almost.
Esther McCullough. Jordan Tenenbaum.
Fairfax and the Springfield District.
Barbara Peters. Cheryl Rapetti.
Sorry, I'm here in Centerville in Sully District.
Okay. Sue Kovac Schumann.
Mantua.
Lynn Gavi Hodge. Liz Kroll.
Liz Kroll in Alexandria.
Christopher Babashak.
Barbershak, City of Fairfax.
Babashak. Laura Wickstead.
Laura Wickstead, Springfield.
All right. Did I miss anyone? Okay. At this point, I will pass the gavel, the virtual gavel, to my co-chair, Mary Lipsey, so that I may make the appropriate motions. I move that the committee certify for the record that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
I second. I second.
Jordan second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. The second, I move that the committee certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented. Yes.
May I interrupt? Denise, I just got a call from Carol, and she would ask if you would send her that link again.
Sure, no problem, ma'am.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Yes, yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. I will send her the link right now.
Okay. Second, I move that the committee certify that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee and the public to physically attend this meeting in person, and the usual procedures cannot be implemented safely or practically. As a result, I further move that the FCRHA conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-844-621-3956 and entering access code 129-588-2281.
I second.
Barbara Nath seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Third, the need to dispense with FOIA's unusual procedures to assure continuity in government continue operations. Finally, I move that the committee certify that the matters on its agenda today relate to the COVID-19 emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the committee's business, lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Having completed that, I will take the gavel back from Mary,
There you go.
and we will start the meeting. And I see Barbara Peters is here. Barbara, can you hear us?
Yes, I can
She
hear.
might be. Okay.
I was here in
Okay.
roll call.
I had you, I didn't hear you, so. Thank you. Okay, since last month, Mary and I have received several lists that have been compiled and coming from committee members. We have Hunter Mill, Mount Vernon, Drainsville. We've received Mary's list of cemeteries and markers. So I think we can take this time to sort of go around the group and let us know what you've encountered in making list or how far you've gotten along in creating a list. Barbara, do you want to start? with
Sure.
Hunter Mill?
Yes. Hunter Mill, Ann and I have worked hard. We ended up sharing a map to try and determine the extent of the district, which in case of Hunter Mill is sort of interesting. So what we have at this point, Ann will talk about Vienna, but we have Cartersville Church. We have Frying Pan and Frying Pan Meeting House and Frying Pan Farm Park. But the line, as we can tell, goes down Centerville Road. So the issues in Florence, the site of the what they call the colored school, and it may be that the farm out there, I think it's the Lee family, it may be that that's in Sully District. So that's what we have there. And then in Reston, I provided on a list, that's the place I've done the most work to find where there are materials that talk about the blacks in Reston. And so that's what I've done. We have a book and videos and materials on Black focus that are located in George Mason University Library, their special collections. And I've been in touch with the Reston Museum, which does not have very much. So that's what we have here. And I'll turn it over to Ann to talk about Vienna, if that's okay. Ann, where are you?
I'm here. Woo!
Okay.
See me? Okay.
Yes.
Who's Seven Corners? What district? Or is it not clear?
It's Masonville. I mean,
'Cause I
Mason.
wanna, Mom and I have been working on her Falls Church book, and she has this guy who reminds me of Vienna's Salisbury, who after the war sold a lot, subdivided his his property for a lot of African American families. So so that's I'll share him with you. He might be well known, but I'd never heard of him. That's my segue over to Vienna, which had an active and my guess is fairly large African American community around here. And we had this fellow, Captain Salisbury from New England. He was a hunk of a guy. I finally found a photograph of him. Woo! He settled here on a big dairy farm, and then after the war started selling. Oh, he had been in charge of one of the colored troop units. And so once he got to Vienna and his beautiful big 250-acre dairy farm, he started subdividing and selling them to former slave families and free blacks as well. So that's just a great story that we need to, just flesh out more than we have it. We've got Louise Archer School, and there's a wonderful book that we hope to get back into print by Sylvia Taylor, who's on the Historic Vienna board. And then she's been working with Gloria Runyon, who, among others, descends from the woman of color, Keziah Carter. And they've put together a really nice bus tour, which was on hold, of course, for the last year. A bus tour about the African American community here. It's like this new house is the site of a nice little of a former home of a former African American. A lot of tear downs, unfortunately. So, but they're really keeping the history alive by doing talks and doing this bus tour. So Vienna proper and is pretty good. Like Barbara said, we've got this like we all have these sort of unexpected boundaries. So I'm always looking around the edge of it to see, is there anything more that we should be picking up or giving to somebody else? Because I really haven't memorized my district at all. It's very unexpected. I think that's our main story for this part of the county.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. How about Tammy, Mount Vernon?
I wanted to check everything that was on the inventory of historic sites. So I sort of ran into problems of definition as I was going through. So, for instance, we have a lot of properties that have been torn down. And so, how much do you want to talk about those? Because not a place you can go visit.
All right.
And then the associations sometimes are smaller associations with a big impact. Like, for instance, Springbank is a property that was torn down. But that was one of the people who lived there was Armfield, or Franklin and Armfield in Old Town. So is that something that would be listed on the inventory?
Yes.
And then we have a lot of properties that, of course, most of these properties, or many of them, were built with enslaved labor. So you've got Belvoir, you have Collingwood, Wellington, Mount Vernon, all of these are going to show up. So that's what I mean by, like, I wanted to sort of check everything that was on the inventory. Like, we have a lot.
You do have a lot, yes.
Have that history to them. And then of course we have Gum Springs, and then I put a lot of things on the list that weren't on the inventory yet, or maybe they won't end up there at all, because we've got things like Quander Road. That's that's a location that needs to be noted. So I was battling with myself over definitions a little bit, and exactly how to characterize everything. Everything needs an explanation. It's not either on or off. It's like on with an explanation of why it's there. So, and then I was able to find some materials. I found books that I wanted to put on, articles, online presentations. So a lot of detail like that. So it was very interesting. And there's so much more I could add. I mean, I really just touched the tip of the iceberg, but I thought this is enough to just get started and talk about it.
That's what we were looking for, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can interrupt 1 minute, when we finish this, Phyllis and I have talked and I put together a suggested way of listing this, a template that we're listing different. I'm going to use the word assets from our good old Confederate names inventory. So we can, the first step is we just say, this is what's there, not, we should
Right.
just, my view is we list everything that has a connection with African American history in one way or the other to start. So I'll back off, but Phyllis and I
Mary
talked
will
about
have
that.
something.
Pardon me?
Mary will have something also on that.
Okay.
Drainsville, Carol. Was Carol able to get in?
I don't know.
Hang on for just a second. My guess is she's the call. Hey, hang on. I do.
Yeah, it's a
apologize.
356 number. She's a
Yeah, I
356
can't.
number.
Hang on. Sorry.
She's muted.
Yes, right.
Why do cats like keyboards?
Hi, Carol.
All right, are you still muting me? I don't blame you.
You're unmuted now.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Hello. Well, all right, Drainsville. In an area called Chesterbrook, which is part of McLean now, is a road called Kirby Road. And that was a mixed community. And it was known as Lincolnsville after the Civil War. And it's known as Chesterbrook today. And there is a Chesterbrook United Methodist Church and adjoining cemetery in that area. And the church is still there and the cemetery. And Reverend Carter started that church. I believe it was 1866. And there was a colored church right on the property in an Oddfellows Lodge. And that building is no longer there, but the flagpole is still there, which is kind of interesting. There is a street called Cottonwood Street, and a family named Hall lived all along Cottonwood Street. And the Halls got that property right after the Civil War, and there's a very small memorial planted for the Hall family in back of a park, which is kind of neat. Shiloh Baptist Church is there on Spring Hill Road, and there's a cemetery in back of that church. Audrey's Corner, there is a Fairfax County marker at Audrey's Corner, and when streets cross, I guess you call it a corner, but the marker's in the wrong place. And it always bugs me because it's not at Audrey's Corner. But there is a marker for Audrey's farmhouse a little further down Lewisville Road. It's one of those two-legged slant back marker indicating where the Audrey's house was. There was the Audrey's schoolhouse, which was at Audrey's Corner, and it's been demolished, and there's a Charity Baptist Church roughly on that property today. I'm not done yet. Pleasant Grove Church and adjoining cemetery. That's along Lewisville Road. Right. There is a Borges farmhouse, which was right adjacent in these days to Ash Grove Farm. And Denise, is across the street from the Bible Church. And the Borges family, the Borges farmhouse, it was called Ash Grove Farm, and they owned property on both sides of Route 7. And that farmhouse is there today, but it could be down tomorrow because they're widening Route 7, and the farmhouse is going to go. And they're going to put a little street name calling it the Borges Drive or something or other. In Great Falls, which was called Forestville, there was a Forestville Colored School, and that's been demolished, but it was on Walker Road, and it's across the street from today's Great Falls Elementary School. there was another church further out in Great Falls called Mount Moriah Baptist Church. There was the Salem Baptist Church, which was on Georgetown Pike just before you got to Route 7. And then there's the Ford Ellis Sims Cemetery, which is there today, in back of a shopping center, which is near Georgetown Pike and Route 7. There was the Florist Colored School, which has been demolished. And then lastly, the Oak Grove School in Herndon. There may be more. I don't know.
Wow. Wow. Wonderful.
I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, so I just did that. So
Make a list. Make a list.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Mary has done cemeteries and markers.
I have a list in my mind for Braddock District, but before I forget, for Ann Stuntz, Harmon Salisbury is buried in the Maryfield Cemetery. And
Oh, yeah, I'm
he also
familiar with it.
Yeah, he also donated land for the West End Cemetery. Okay, and there's a
Donated,
wonderful.
And then Salisbury Spring is part of his dairy farm. And
Yeah,
okay. Thank you for reminding me of all that. There's a lot of interesting stories about him. It'd be good to.
Well, and Gloria Runyon has a interview online about her, but she's living she's a great granddaughter of a Native American, and she's living in this home. So anyway.
She's in Douglas Brown's house.
Yeah. And
she's great.
I have several examples of oral history from Sue. If she hasn't picked them up for Providence, I'll talk to her. But let's get to the Braddock District. First of all, on the inventory site list, there's only one, and it's Little Zion Church and Cemetery located on Brook Lake Road. And Denise, you and I can talk offline because the Little Zion Church doesn't exist anymore. The congregation is now around maybe less than a couple miles from there, called the Greater Little Zion Baptist Church. And my information has the cemetery called the Pearson Church Cemetery, and not far from it is the Pearson Family Cemetery. So I don't know what we need to do, if we need to do anything for the historic inventory site list, which names the church as Little Zion, but you and I can talk about that later. There was a African American community in Burke. There also was one in Ilda, which is at the corner of Guinea Road and Little River Turnpike. That is also the site of a cemetery that there was an archaeological survey done there, and 32 remains of African Americans were removed and buried across from Nova into the Pleasant Valley Cemetery over there. And it's quite an interesting story about how that happened, the rediscovery of the cemetery and all of that. There are 3 suspected slave cemeteries in Annandale, which a couple of them have a little field markers, but some have nothing. But they believe they are slave cemeteries to Ocean Hall and Oak Hill. And then also, I know the oral history that we did for Bragg's True Gold of Dennis Howard, who actually worked on helping to preserve that Ilda cemetery. But his family is from the area of Maryfield and Dunloring and Gravelbank and Tremont. So we interviewed him as his relationship to the cemetery in Braddock District, but we want to pick up his interview to make sure we get all that information. He also is related to the people who are buried in Sons and Daughters, the Pines community. So there's a lot of information in his interview for the Braddock True Gold. And the last thing, though it's not my district, I just want to remind people of the small community of Willard, African-American community near Dallas Airport, that when Burke got them to agree to not put Dallas Airport in Burke, they took this small community in Willard, and it was not entirely African-American, but a large part of it was African-American for the Dallas Airport. And Phyllis, did you want me to talk about what we were talking about with templates, or hold off?
She's muted.
Okay.
Phyllis, you're muted.
muters.
Sorry. Yeah, let's hold off on the templates until we get the reports.
All right.
Okay.
I did have a cemetery question for Mary. As I was thinking about it last night, I wondered if the Woodlawn Methodist Cemetery that's on the grounds of Fort Belvoir is on your list.
Yes, it is. I don't have my list right in front of
Yes.
me, but it is on the list. And also, I believe there's a marker associated with it, a marker. I'm not sure.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Now I want to make sure that would be easy to overlook that one just because it's on Fort Belvoir.
Right.
Where it is. Yeah.
Hey, Mary, this is Chris. Is Sideburn on your list?
Oh, the Sideburn community. I forgot. No, it is not. I'll add that. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, can we hear from others that I don't have a report from, but I know that you've been working on things.
Well,
So,
I'm the slacker of the crowd. I thought that I would start with Naomi Zevin's research. And that turned out to be a bigger challenge than I thought, because she gave the books to Penny Gross's office and they searched the entire thing, and they apparently gave them all to the Virginia room. And so I tried, because I'd gone online with the library and I couldn't have any of them. So, and then I called Naomi, and she didn't seem willing to, I could come over and see them, but she would not lend anything to me. So I was waiting for the library to open up again.
But the Virginia room has a list of some of the things that she submitted.
Well, they have most of what she's done. It's just I couldn't go there.
Oh, well, you know, Barbara, you can always reach out and talk to us. Yeah, we can negotiate something. And of course, the library's opening up soon, but that won't give you much time. But I think Chris and I, we can make these accessible to you, and you can take them home. So yeah,
okay.
so next time, just
do that, but
just reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Barbara, if you want to see Naomi's videos, if you just go on YouTube and Google her name, not Google, but search her name in YouTube, all of her videos are on there.
Yeah, I've done the videos. I could get the videos. It was the books I couldn't get a hold of.
And for our first efforts of identifying what is available rather than all the contents of it, the list at Virginia Room should help, I think.
Yes. Yes, that would be exactly what we'd be looking for. Okay.
I know I'm the other.
Sure.
I'm going to challenge Barbara for slacker role here. But let's see. I actually only started it this morning, to be honest. And what I have so far, I've been noting the references to the Chantilly Dulles airport folks. I'll check those out. Where's that's the wrong file. So I'm ashamed to say how Dulles is kind of a weird shape, and it includes places that I never realized were I noted it when we were doing the Confederate names. It's like, oh, really? That's part of the Sully district, huh? Wow. So there's a fair amount of out there that I don't know that much about, and I have to. I don't know if we can, Denise, if we can get those files that planning has, or I can just do some basic research in terms of I have access to deeds and things like that and census rolls. But so what's already on the in inventory, yeah, on the well, on our inventory. So the new Willoughby Newton Stone, I think not a lot of folks know that that was actually preserved by the actions of Hattie Gaskin Brown, who was an African-American landowner in Fairfax, in Centerville. Like Mount Vernon, their district, there are sites that are noted for the fact that they were worked by and potentially built by enslaved labor. So Mount Gilead, I know that Mr. Jameson used enslaved labor for the tanneries at Centerville. The Civil War earthworks that are surround Centerville, I know Marion Dobbins made a did a presentation about her ancestor, who actually was, I think he avoided being impressed into working on those. But basically they used impressed-free African-American labor to build them, potentially also enslaved labor. So that's a thing to investigate further. Leeton had enslaved labor. Level Green, Sarah Clark Summers has a memoir which talks about the specific individuals, enslaved individuals that lived there during the Civil War and helped to maintain the farm, and actually kept in touch with folks after the war. Manassas Gap Railroad, I wonder if there we would also see the use of African-American labor to create that railroad as far as they got to in creating it since never finished. Harrison House has a potential connection with Beckwith, which Lynn, I'm sure, can talk more about Mr. Beckwith, who winds up having property in Clifton. Civil Earthworks. I'm not sure about what the history is with the Centerville Methodist Church. There may be, it started off being open to all sorts of denominations. And I know when they give tours, they talk about a balcony for use of African-American parishioners. I'm not sure what the history of St. John's Church is like. Cable's Mill may have definitely did have landowners, property owners of Cable's Mill who were African-American, but I don't know if they actually operated the mill. Lane's Mill did have a member of the Robinson family owned and operated that mill at the end of the mill's life as a mill. See, there's a lot of places like Appledore that I've never heard of before. So I have to like sort of start from scratch from those to figure out what's going on. Things that aren't on the list include that aren't on our list but might be added to our inventory. Cub Run Church. The Cub Run Colored School is still standing. And as is the Cub Run Church. There are cemeteries in the area, which I need to see our cemetery list. But I know of one offhand, which is the Cub Run Cemetery on Naylor Road, which has a colored U.S. U.S. colored soldier member, sergeant, who fought with
Kane Duncan. Kane Duncan.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Exactly, Kane Duncan. Yeah, I'm like trying to remember. I know he's fought at one of these battles that was really, important. Petersburg, I think it was at.
Very interesting story about him because he was arrested for desertion. Yeah,
he was, but I think they got that cleared. It was like a misunderstanding, and he finally cleared it up.
Well, except the bounty hunter got to save his money. I do talks on him. I've done all the research on his and all that stuff. Yeah, the bounty hunter got $30 for bringing him in.
Oh, wow.
And
Well, that,
they erased the desertion, but he got to keep the money. The other one is Mount Pleasant. Is Frying Pan near in Sully or not?
so you
No,
know,
not,
as you
not
guys,
the park. No,
yeah, I don't think,
Frying Pan Meeting House is in one of, we can claim Hunter Mill, Little Honey Mill can claim that.
Okay, all right, because there's the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. There's a colored troop there too, whose name escapes me right now, but.
Depends on which side of Centerville Road it is.
yeah, so I'll have to, I'll have to,
Sally, yeah.
So-
Yeah, that church is on Copper Mine Road.
So I have a question, if I might just jump in before I have to jump off. And it doesn't deal with anything that you guys have been talking about, and obviously I can't contribute much to this discussion, but what happened to the African American community in Fairfax County? Where did it go?
what do you mean? It's
You mean
always
the
been here.
city?
Yeah, I mean,
City?
well, I mean, like in Fairfax City, and I wish Dave were on, you have the Baptist church, but you don't have, from what I can see, much of an African American community there. And in general, are there places today where there's an African American community?
Still in
Maybe-
Maryfield, Falls Church on Andale Road.
Springs.
There's a couple others, but right now it just doesn't. In Vienna,
there-
yeah,
Yeah, Spring Bank.
yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious because that I didn't realize, but I do know, living close to where I think there used to be an African American community in Fairfax. Well, it's right on the border of Fairfax County and Fairfax City. There's not much left. That's where the Rosenwald School sign marker is. That's where I imagine that would have been a community there. But
Do you know if there was if it had a name, Jordan?
I don't.
It's called 11 Oaks.
11 Oaks,
Thank you,
yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
It was named after, yeah.
Thank
There
you.
also was, near the school, there was a colored cemetery, not Germantown, excuse me, a colored school. It's on the maps. You can see it. It says colored school before Rosenwald existed.
Uh-huh.
Not far from the courthouse.
Right.
That's why the school ledgers are incredible to read. And that would help also with identifying locations of the schools because they're in the school ledgers.
Right.
That should be on the list that Jeff Clark has put together for old schools of yesteryear in Fairfax County.
Right.
Well, and then there was the map. I was going to say the map of African American sites in Fairfax County. It had schools, churches.
Yes, and
Yes.
thank you. I was going to actually ask about that, Tammy, because it's not on our website. Is there a digital version of it? And should it be on our website? Not on the African, but on the general. I mean, I was surprised to find it wasn't on our regular website.
Phyllis can talk to that. But
The last reprint was done in 2009.
Right.
And it's almost out of circulation. There are not that many copies floating around.
Right.
And to answer your question, it's not online.
Right. No, that's what I was finding. And I was just, is there a reason that it's not online?
There's several reasons.
Okay. All right. Then we
Yes.
won't deal with that here in this context. That's fine then.
We can use it and we can talk about that at a later time.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. No problem.
Yeah.
For the committee to use. Cheryl, you haven't mentioned Sully. You haven't mentioned Sully.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there. Actually, is Sully in Sully District? I guess it must be. Yeah, so there's Sully has Sully has an extensive archives on enslaved people who lived at Sully, including some people who kept in touch after the war. And if you wanted to add more about that, Barbara, I mean, there's that huge.
Well, just for our listing, we just need to make sure Sully is listed because of during enslaved time, but also afterwards. So it's just where African Americans lived and worked.
Yeah, and you know what? Sully is not on our inventory. Unless I missed it as I was copying and pasting. it's actually not on our inventory at all.
I thought all the things that were listed in the National Register were automatically.
Right. I believe that's correct.
Maybe it's not an up-to-date list on our website.
I was
Was it
gonna
added
say,
recently?
even if it's on National Register, it should show up like it was grandfathered in, like Mount Vernon is on our, that's on our
Right.
inventory because it's
Yes.
National Register. So it should be there.
Okay.
What about Walney? Because they
Walney
lease
would also,
people, so it should be there too.
yes, Walney should also be there, but is not on our inventory. Oh, yes, it is. Okay.
So
I missed a
Sully-
page.
Sully-
I'm sorry,
Sully
I
is
missed a
listed,
page.
yes.
Yeah,
That
Sully's
was,
listed and Walney is listed, and it's just I missed a page.
Yes, he is.
Where's that African American map? The one that was last printed in 2009?
I have a copy. Phyllis has copies. It was
I
not
have-
a print.
It went out, so it's not online anywhere.
No,
No, it's not.
Yeah, that's why I was just looking for it. Okay.
no, it's not.
No, it was never put online.
Okay. Other than some of the things that obviously Mary already has, I started looking into the Pines and in places in Annandale and fleshing out what all was at Ilda. But what I really need to do is go in and look at some property records and go to the courthouse and figure out some of this. I was also wondering what kind of organizations, social organizations, supportive organizations, or things might have been, might be part of this fabric of putting together the thing about people. And I started with the churches, but like I said, I did not get very far. And I know about all the obvious places. That's it. I haven't really put together a whole lot yet. Sorry.
That's okay. We're in the starting stage.
Sue, I grew up in Providence. I'll help you with that. Okay.
Well, I know I've lived here for a very long time, but I don't seem to be discovering a whole lot of new, I guess. Thank you.
Well, the other thing is, it just occurred to me, we have the slave inventory. And I don't know if Chris Barbershop has that. I mean, what I'm thinking about is when I go to Edith Strauss 1860 census,
Yeah.
and they refer to the slave inventory.
Well, yeah, I'm familiar with that. That's why I'm saying I need to get in and look at some of this stuff.
Yeah, I just don't know if Chris is, and Laura, is that online anywhere or available to us besides Edith Strauss?
Oh,
I don't think so, Mary. I think it only exists as an index card over at the Fairfax courthouse.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
I think
That's
Maddie
correct.
had started, Maddie McCoy, I think
Right.
started building a website, and I remember seeing it at one point in time, but I don't know whatever happened to it.
well, I've seen parts of it. It's not comprehensive, so it's a matter of going into the courthouse and kind of digging and, having the time to do that first.
yeah.
But yeah, it's there. It's just in pieces, and Maddie got a lot of other things going on, and it'll probably be what it is for a while, I
But
think.
it can be listed as a source. And don't forget Donald Swagg's book.
Right.
The registration of free
The
black.
registration.
Yes.
And
I put that on my list, yeah.
Yeah, and I have talked to him. I guess he doesn't mind if people call him, but he doesn't really like email. But we have a phone number for him.
And Debbie Robeson has some on her Nova history website also.
A little bit. She has some really good things on the schools and on Freedmen, the Bureau of Freedmen activities after the war.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also found 2 contraband camps in, and I'm sorry, I don't have all my sources right in front of me, but one is in Lewisville. There were 2 in Fairfax County, if I remember right, up in the McLean area. And because I was interested in the wood choppers in Burke, because the wood choppers were, in a skirmish at the Burke station. And I thought, so where were they staying? Because as far as I know, they weren't staying in Burke. So where did they come from? And that's something it'll probably take me a couple years to find that out. But I really do want to research these 2 band camps. and see what I can find out. Ron Baumgarten has an interesting, it's a YouTube and a PBS information on it.
It's quite a large contraband camp in Louisville.
Yeah, that's something we need to identify.
Ron really knows about that.
Yeah.
Where in Louisville? Do we know?
Up Chainbridge Road, up toward McLean itself. It goes even a little past McLean itself. It's quite large.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
We're learning a lot today.
There's a lot I didn't know. That's
what it's
part
all
of,
about.
that's part of the excitement of this. Look how much we have already, and we're just making our first lists.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yes. Did we miss anybody that wants to report on it, on what they found? Okay.
Well, I was going to tap Chris. This is Laura. I was going to tap Chris to say something about what's in the Virginia room.
Please do.
Well, we got photographs. We've got that map that everyone keeps talking about that they're not talking about. We've got both versions of that. We have, there's, I guess, maybe about 3 collections that that would be inventoried as part of this project. One is we have the Friends of the Pleasant Grove Church records, so several church records from that church. Another is, and Barbara will know this more than I think, I can't think of it. It's that Reston organization, something.
Black Focus. Black Focus.
Yeah, but I think it's something different. It's like Neighbors for Better Community or something like that. Have you heard of that?
You do have some Reston files. I think that's correct.
So we have a box full of them that hasn't been processed. And then there's another that was recently donated about a year or 2 ago from Mary Goins Roots, who grew up in the Sideburn area of Burke, and she taught at actually the school that Jordan was mentioning about 11 Oaks. And actually, we're shifting collections in the rare book room, and I just came across this collection the other day that I didn't even know really we had, or I knew we had it, but I never really looked at it because it hasn't been processed. But I believe, I can't remember the name of the family. I think it might be Carter, but it's amazing. One box, it's a collection full of photographs, and there is a photo of a class staying in front of the pre-1939 Vienna Colored School, and it's an amazing photo, and there's a bunch of other photos in there. So yeah, we're finding things that we didn't even know we had. So.
Good.
And I just texted Heather asking her about the slavery index database. She said there is an internal database, so they do have an internal database there at the courthouse, just not publicly available.
Right.
Okay. Okay, then, Mary, I think we can go to talking about templates.
Okay. Phyllis and I were talking because we had quite a discussion last meeting as to what to do. And what we were thinking about starting out simply basic information by district. And what we mean is that, establish it by a category, the title of the, whatever it is, it's a cemetery, it's a school or whatever, the location and a short description. And if, in the description, if you know the years, that would be helpful for the history teacher and me, if you can put the years it was built, etc. And then from there, we can, take the next step as to how we want to put it, whether it goes to, a website, a storyline, an inventory, hard copy, whatever. But just in the beginning, do that. As we're doing this, if you come across, like Tammy's come across some references or resources that apply to the whole county, would you please send them to Phyllis and me? Because we'll keep like I've sent Phyllis and the contraband information article I found. I also found that there's the, and I won't get it right, Trail to Freedom, which is the Underground Railroad.
Mhm.
Fairfax County has 2 sites listed on that. One is Riverbend Park and the other is Sully. Because the Trail to Freedom is not necessarily recording the Underground Railroad, but where slaves attempted to escape. And that's what Sully's story is. So
Network to Freedom.
Pardon me?
Network to Freedom is the.
That's it. That's right. Network to Freedom. So anything like that that applies to the entire county, like the slave inventory or this article about contraband, even though we know it's Lewinsville and whatever the other place is, I forgot. It's still, we can put it all together because we got to figure out what category is that going to be. You know, we deal with that. So does that make sense? I just repeat it again. If you do a category, you do the title, place, description, and of course they will all be the same district there. And I'll send this out to everybody.
And Barbara has some something similar as a template also.
Right. Well, mine's very similar to Mira. I think we were thinking alike, and I put it together in my categories as a beginning. It's called the initial listing for each district, and my goal is perhaps since anything that we do at the History Commission, we need to have available ahead of time. So if we could somehow put our list together, then we could put that and present it to the full commission. Although most of us are right here in this committee. It's wonderful. So what I did was have physical sites, and in that I had buildings, archaeological sites, and cemeteries. Then I had collected written printed materials, and under that I listed museums, Virginia Room, George Mason Library, Park Authority, other, where we knew that there were, and then within each district, if you know you have materials in that place that reference your district, you would put them. And then known digital locations. An example I used is the Reston interviews for this Reston book called The Legacy of Reston Blacks. The interviews are all on YouTube. Then I would have oral histories, markers, family and private records, and objects. It was just attempting to say, put like with like, which I think is essentially what Mary has done, and it's attempting to organize, simply identify what we have identified before we do anything else with it. So anyway, that was my suggestion.
Do you guys remember the project that the History Commission did, but really Carol Herrick did for the 275th? And that was to collect just tons and tons of oral history information. You know, it's like this, only she just beat the bushes for every oral history she could find. And so we should also, that was online at some point. I don't know if I don't remember it on our website or if it's at the Virginia Room. But when you said oral history, I'm like, oh, right, Barbara, oral histories. That's a huge part.
And that's what Gary and Phyllis are attempting to have happen right now.
Yes. But we've already, as you say, there already exist a bunch, and they need to join the list as well. So that's another resource, is you, Carol.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it's kind of like a big pile that's already done, It's just going through it and which is which.
Well, do you think, Carol, do you think that for the most part you would mention if it was African American?
I didn't hear all your questions. For the most part, what?
Do you, when you write, because poor Carol wrote a paragraph on every single oral history to say a little bit what it was about. And so do you think, Carol, that in many cases or most cases you made a note of whether they were African American?
I didn't make a note, but as I recall, it's kind of self-explanatory, but I'd have to go back and hunt that thing up. But it's in the Virginia Room.
Well, this is Laura in the Virginia room. We had a wonderful volunteer who took Carol's work and built on it. And then Chris, over the last year, has created an oral history page. Chris, I'm going to be quiet and let you speak to that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's just an oral history page that has maybe about 100 PDFs of the transcriptions from our recordings that we have. And then Carol's list is on there as well, so that's posted on there. And then we had a volunteer who actually probably found like 200 plus more oral history recordings in the county, and that's kind of a work in progress. We haven't posted that yet, but yes, there is an oral history webpage there.
Great.
I have a question. Thinking of Mary's, I'm going to use Frying Pan Meeting House as an example. If we're doing by categories, because we have the building there, that's one aspect. We have the burial grounds, that's another aspect. We have the pews, which are objects, the pews that were upstairs, where the African American members could go. We also have the minutes, and the minutes, there's reference to it, but the Park Authority, Liz knows about this, because they're on loan from a group that the Park Authority staff can't and can no longer locate. They can't be published. We can use them as reference to learn about, but we couldn't publish them. But in that instance, you would have Frying Pan listed under different categories. You could do it that way, or you could list Frying Pan and list everything underneath it. So it's just a sample. I think Sully would be the same kind of a thing, some of these bigger places. So
I think it's a good idea to do one name and several categories, because also with Frying Pan, you have a slave cemetery somewhere off in the woods there, and also the baptismal, the dunking place. Okay.
Yes.
So it might be that we could make a legend that would just, say B for building, A for archaeological site, etc. And with Frying Pan, then just next to
have multiple.
Yes, have multiples, something like that.
We're getting into fine tuning, but I think we need to, however we begin to put our list together. That's it. Yeah, that's an example.
Let me work on it and send out an idea, and Phyllis can look at it. And then Phyllis, if you want to send it out to the committee, and Barbara and everybody can weigh in and say yay or nay. This is not what we want, or have you.
Okay, and I'll send you, Mary, what I sent Phyllis, because this was just off the top of my head. So
because a lot of these churches have cemeteries. So are we going to duplicate it? Are we going to say, First Baptist Church on Annandale Road, and then First Baptist Church, I think it's Second Baptist Church, but anyway, and the cemetery. Are we going to separate them or put them together? And I think they should be put together. So,
can I ask
it's a lot easier to read.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? Tammy raised the issue, which I hadn't really thought about, which is listing these places that we know where enslaved people lived. And I would say absolutely. I just hadn't gotten that far in thinking through African American communities. So that makes the list even greater, even larger.
I mean, that's why Edith Sprouse inventory is so important, because Silas Burke has slaves, so identifying, Fitzhugh had slaves. So we need to figure out how to identify that. Are we going to say, enslaved workers as a category?
Or if we're locating, if the purpose is to say, here is where African Americans lived, enslaved, free, whatever. And so those are questions.
That'd be hard, in a lot of cases, be hard to figure out.
Right, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, because you have the freed slaves of King Carter, but then they married enslaved
people, right?
So, how do we categorize them?
Do we include Mount Vernon?
Yes. Yes, Mount Vernon has a cemetery. It has
That's a
and
big
safe
one.
quarters, you know, everything.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Mount Vernon, Gunston Hall also.
Right.
Yes, all of
is on
those.
the list, yeah.
Yep.
And Mount Vernon has done quite a bit of research, archaeology on the House for Families and other resources out there. So I think they would be a good addition.
Right, and I even put on my list exhibits because the Lives Bound Together exhibit is there. And then I
Right.
considered the Gum Springs Museum an exhibit. And then even at West Potomac High School, they have a Quander collection that they keep in a window case at the library. They might not be happy with me for saying that that's an exhibit. I put open by appointment. But,
That's
um,
I
but any
listed.
place we can go look.
Right. I listed
Yeah,
museums as part of mine where you have either objects or collect or written or printed materials as museums. That would, I suppose, expand to historic, a place where you can go and see the, you know, the remnant of it, either in words or in an object.
I think one of the
And
other
I mean,
things
this
is
is a
that,
little bit off the wall.
go ahead, Liz.
Oh, I was going to say it's a little bit off the wall, but different organizations like our Friends Group, Friends of Fairfax Archaeology, Gunston Hall, and others hold symposia. And so some of those symposia have been taped
Right.
and they'll be available like on YouTube or somewhere else. So again, it's a little bit, you know, and it's not always specific to the county, but in some cases there might be information that would be, you know, good context.
I think that's a good asset. You know, there are many recordings because of COVID. There are many recordings that many of these organizations have up there that are
That's-
applicable.
Yes.
That's right.
Our most recent history conference.
Yes, 100%.
Speaking of the history conference, Phyllis, can I say something?
Yes, Barbara.
A lot of us here are on the conference committee. I have two proposals. One is that we have, whatever we call it, a short session or something, is that we, the committee presents. This is what we have, whether we go through our list, whether it's a handout, whatever it is, but we talk about what, I mean, just listen to what all we have just talked about and listed. And if the purpose of this, one of the purposes of this whole project is to integrate all these pieces into the whole story of Fairfax County history, which I think it is, then how wonderful to say, here's where we are, and present that to everybody somehow, whether it's a listing, and maybe from each district we could have one really great story about one particular place or family or something. But that way we would be, that would show where we've accomplished. And it's only March, so we should be able to have something organized for it. So anyway, I'd like to know what people think, because it would be a really a good opportunity, I think.
I think that's an interesting idea. And it almost doesn't matter what state we're in at that point. It's really an update as to, hey, this initiative is going on, and this is the kinds of things we're collecting and what we expect out of it. And here's how far we are right now.
And then my other idea that ties into that I would like the committee to recommend to the conference committee. And this comes from my talks with Phyllis, and that is, I haven't come up with a title, but I think it would be interesting to have a presentation dealing with the life of an African American in economic terms, from when they were enslaved, when they were freed, right up through 20th century. And Phyllis, tell them about, maybe everybody but me knew about Burke and Herbert Bank. I didn't know it, but it's an example she told me about. But part of Reston Black Focus, which I didn't know about until I started, and I've been here, I knew one aspect of it, but the residents actually went to Lake, our first elementary school, and said, the curriculum is not good. We need to, I want to tell stories about African Americans. This is in like 1968. Okay. So, it would be interesting of talking about what an African American person has to deal with in the economy, whatever kind of economy it is. In slave times, they, say there's the sale of these people was a third of the economy of Fairfax County, if you read Netherton. But then you're going into what happened in the 20th century. And so I think it's important, if we're trying to explain what happened, not only good things, but bad things in the overall, in the history, in the economic history. So Phyllis, would you tell that story? Would you tell that story?
Okay. Burke and Herbert was formed back in the 1800s, and it was a bank in close to where my father and his siblings lived, in the Franconia area. But it was the only bank that would lend to African Americans. And what I told Barbara was, our Laurel Grove School Association account is with Burke and Herbert on Franconia Road. And I had to go in earlier this year to talk about a CD that we had for the association. And the young vice president was African American, and his last name was Giles. And as we talked, I realized that he was connected to the Bushrod family in the Gunston area, off of Gunston Road. And so I told him, I said, the only reason why I have this account here for the association is because years ago, that was the only bank that would lend to African Americans and actually take African American accounts. And he didn't know that. And so when he went to a meeting later on that week, he let the executives at Burke and Herbert know that, because that was the only bank in the city of Alexandria that was actually lending to African Americans. So my dad and his 4 siblings all had accounts there. And when they bought their cars, their first vehicle, that's where they got the loan.
Cool.
So the family just kept those accounts over the years. And Burke and Herbert was a hands-on bank, and took years before they ever went digital and formed branches in other locations.
Interesting.
Barbara, I would suggest we're doing the big picture. With economics, I think we should also add education.
Yes.
And their family lives, because every person and the church, and I mean, I know it's a big thing, but at least touch upon, we need to discuss how, education was denied,
right,
for them. And once they had it, it wasn't equal. But also how important the church and the community life and the county fair and all that stuff was to make these communities what they were. So I yes, economics, but I'd like to broaden it a little bit.
I think that
makes sense.
Yes.
That's the entirety of African American history. I mean, you're proposing a specific presentation at the history conference, weren't you, Barbara?
What I'm trying to do is trying to, Lynn's not here, but she locked into something I put in the memo that I sent to her to share with the conference. I'm all big picture, and so I was looking at the economics, the part of their lives that was that way. But I certainly agree with Mary. If we somehow need to find a way to incorporate the big picture and put it into the context of Fairfax County history as a whole. So I not leave out the economic, and so I'm muddled, but I'm still trying to come up with it. I think the conference really needs to reflect this initiative, which is broad.
And I think probably 90% of our residents in Fairfax County had no idea that African Americans could not go to high school in their own county.
Right.
Until 1965. And I mean, that's to me is something, even if it's just stated that, that way, that the African American one-room schoolhouses, their term was shorter than the white schools. There was disparity in supplies and all of that. But the one that really got to me, and I don't know the year, but I remember African American parents went before the school board asking for help for transportation for their children to get to school, not out to Manassas, but just to get to school in Fairfax County. The school board discussed it and said, that's a mighty fine idea. Those are my words. That's it. They did not provide transportation for them. And that's something that just needs to be out there to see, how difficult it was for the communities.
Yeah. So I mean, there is a, in terms of the conference, and I mean, I'm not sure. Again, if you want to make you want this committee to make a recommendation to the conference committee, because because the conference is going to have 2 years, if I remember correctly, that's devoted to African American history. So this year,
they're having four. Lynn has set up that we're having 4, and that this one is going to be Native Americans and African Americans,
right?
And then all these other immigrants. But all I focus on is this year's, and I thought if this committee could agree on a recommendation from the committee to say this is what the committee wants the conference to include, since we are the core that's working on this. So yes, Cheryl, that's what I'd like. But I would only be looking at this year, because who knows what's happening next year.
Oh,
well,
yeah, recommending.
There is a speaker that Lynn has started to line up, who is going to talk about, and I think perhaps not specifically in Fairfax County. I'm not sure what the scope of his talk is, but it is focused on economics and the economics of slavery as an institution for the nation. So that is actually going to be addressed.
As you all know, and bless her, but when Lynn has her ideas, she goes and sets it up. And so I'm trying to have an opportunity that the committee itself can also have a role in this, since we're doing this.
Okay.
So,
and I haven't had an opportunity to listen to it, but he does have the gentleman she recommended does have something on YouTube. So
Noah
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Whatever. It's just a thought. I don't,
Yeah. And Barbara, I thought what you were recommending was a single presentation as a status update, as an awareness of what was going on in this committee that would fit into whatever else the conference committee had planned.
Yes, I was getting greedy, but
that's
yes,
true.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I was greedy.
I mean, Barbara, we can certainly see if we can find somebody who can talk more about, these. I mean, and I know that we're talking about some of these issues. Cat's tail in my mouth. But I mean, we could try to see if there's somebody who's done research on these economic institutions in Fairfax County. I don't know of anybody who has, but we could go and see if we can find someone, or we could do some research on that.
The first thing is to say to Lynn that we need time. We want a block of time, we being the committee, to present our findings and to talk about them.
Okay.
Don't you all agree to that?
I think it's a good idea.
And another awareness thing that I meant to bring up is, as I was going through kind of remembering what the homework was for this meeting, I was looking on the History Commission website, and I was looking for instance, our last meeting, to just kind of find out when we met and all that stuff. And and there isn't an awareness of this committee at the same level as the Confederate Names Initiative. And I sort of wondered why this one didn't seem to be at the same level of selections on the History Commission. I feel like this should be pretty prominent since this is our focus for the year.
We can create that on the website if you want, if the committee wishes.
Yes.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It took us a little bit of time to put the Confederate one on there as well. You know, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, so yes, I can ask Thomas to set something up for us, and we can even set up a share file, you know, sort of thing. I don't know how quickly, you know, I don't know if you want this, you know, preliminary material publicly available, but we could, just like there was, just like their meeting materials or materials related to Confederate names was available on that website, we could do that as well.
Right. And I was really looking for like just that it existed and what the purpose of this initiative is. I mean, to me, that was my main driver, is like when people come to the History Commission, they should see what this action is and that we're doing it this year.
Yeah,
and
we can
ongoing.
work to
Of course,
put that
this will
on
take
there.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, if Phyllis and Mary, you could get me a statement of that, I can
Yes.
have it put up.
A good idea.
Okay, we can do that.
Anne and I have been asked to, the Confederate names thing just doesn't die. And so Anne and I have been asked to be presenters at Supervisor Alcorn, that's Hunter Mill District Town Hall. He wants to have the subject, the Confederate Names Project, and some other things. And so we ask and we're granted that we can also talk as a follow-up about this project. So that will be in a town hall, what we're doing, and we can, you know, say, people can let us know what they know. So we're getting it out in bits and pieces.
I know Gretchen was great on proclamations during the 275th.
Yeah.
And presenting proclamations in front of the Board of Supervisors. Is that something we want to do? It's just that this is a, you know, a program, project, initiative, whatever, sponsored by the History Commission, and you do all the whereases and all that stuff, and present it to the Board of Supervisors just as awareness about it.
Good point.
I think that's a great idea
Yeah, that's
because
a good idea.
unlike Confederate names, this was internally driven by the History Commission, whereas, you know, the Board of Supervisors was aware of Confederate names because they had requested it. This, I think, you know, deserves some of that awareness, and that might be the right avenue to take.
All they have is our recommendation in the Confederate Names Inventory Report, and that's the extent of it so far.
Well, I'll reach out to Gretchen to get her expertise on how to write one of these, because I know she's done lots of them, and just, you know, to give us the bones, what needs to be said, and then how it's, you know, presented into a proclamation. I'll reach out to her about that.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
So do you all agree that Phyllis is on the conference committee, Mary is having a hiatus from it, but that they recommend to Lynn that we have a opportunity to have a portion of the program to present what we've accomplished to that point, what we're doing?
I think that's a great suggestion to put forward.
Then I'll make a motion if that's okay. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So I move that the co-chairs of the African American History Inventory Committee present to the History Conference Committee the idea that there will be a session of some sort in which the work of the committee will be presented and discussed as it is effective November. Does that make sense?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay. All in favor of that motion,
Okay.
Aye.
say aye.
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 Any abstentions or nays? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to recap, we know that Mary and I are going to create a template and send that out. You're going to continue to look at your list and add to your list. And I will send out the list that I've received in the last couple of weeks. I can share those with everybody. Okay.
Also send the cemeteries and markers.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Mary, do you have anything else?
There's a rich history here that we are, when you put them all together, look how massive
Yeah.
it is.
It's cool.
It's there. We just didn't know. And
It's
now
a
we're bringing it forward and sharing.
story that needs to be told. Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
Yes, absolutely.
there are a lot of hidden stories out there.
Mhm.
Later on, they can be shared in community talks. And at the beginning, before we started the meeting today, I was congratulating Chris on the history talk that he opened Rodney Lusk Lee District Town Hall meeting last Thursday night, explaining the history of Lee District. And the attendees at that meeting, those residents, that was a lot of information that they didn't know about. And they were questioning, where's this Virginia room? And can we have more talks about the history of the
Great,
county?
exciting. That's
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
it was
wonderful.
really good.
I keep thinking
It
about
is.
what a big impact this is going to have on the schools, high schools specifically. The resources that history teachers in high schools are gonna, I feel like they're going to use this more than anyone.
Well, there's the state mandate to add African American history to the classrooms. And
Right.
there's a
Right.
pilot that's going on right now in 16 school districts in the state of Virginia. Fairfax County is not one of them, although we understand that James Madison is high school, I guess it is, Madison High School is doing the pilot, but there's no other schools in Fairfax County that are doing it.
I
Come
just
on,
think
guys.
it's pretty great.
Phyllis, are
So,
they
yeah,
allowed to do like county specific things, or is it like a wider state curriculum?
You mean the schools themselves?
Yeah, for the program.
If it's, from my experience, it would be state oriented, but teachers could always add local history to it.
Yes. We, for the first time this year in February, we were actually asked by a parents group at Waynewood Elementary School in the Mount Vernon area. There's a parents group that it's a diversified group of parents, and the group is called Diversity, Equal Justice, and something else Initiative. And they came to us and wanted us to share the history of Laurel Grove School because one parent had been to one of our presentations. And the principal sat in on that meeting that we had, a virtual meeting we had one evening with those parents. And the principal made the decision that we would give that talk to not only their fourth grade students, but we would give it to the sixth grade students. So we did 2 days each for fourth graders and sixth graders, 30 minutes each presentation. And now we've been asked to do it for a couple of the local communities in Lee District.
Wonderful.
So there's a need out there to share African American history, and a lot of it is driven statewide. But the communities don't know a lot of the history that we do have.
Right. Right.
I also, Barbara and I, when all were sharing communities, African American communities, I have that list too, which I got to Phyllis. So I will add that this afternoon. I'll send that to you. And I put draft at the top of it. Because there's no way that I got everything.
Draft on top of everything.
Yes.
Right.
Well, that map that everybody's talking about from 1860 to 1900, it just covers that time frame. It doesn't go beyond that about African American history.
True.
So you can add to those things.
Yeah, I'm blanking, so I'll be quiet. Well, I know what it was. I know what it was. And that is that Liz, I mean, she can't say where they are, but there needs to be recognition of archaeological sites, or this is where the school was. It's not there anymore. But I think of the Flores Colored School, and it was taken down, and it's in Sully, but still there are places where they've discovered, like out at Patriot Field, where they've discovered that's where Liz, isn't that where the little beads came from?
Yeah.
Some beads came from there. The beads that are in the Smithsonian actually came from the Mount Vernon district.
Okay.
There was a developer project that was actually two quarters for the enslaved and an overseer's quarter that included beads. There were subfloor pits, and they included beads, and they included colonno-ceramics, which is a type of ceramics that are kind of a marker of African American communities. I mean, that's been built on top of, so we can talk about that. And there are other places that we certainly can, do interpretations for, but, in cases where a site might be, in danger of being looted or something like that, we keep the locations of those confidential.
Of course. So I don't know if you could even list them by district if that's getting too close, but I think it's important.
We could probably, and I mean, again, it's similar to what the challenge that some other people are saying. There are some sites that we don't know who the occupants were. We just know that they were using materials of a certain period. But it isn't necessarily, there isn't the smoking gun of, is it an African American site or is it a Euro-American site? So,
right.
And can we say, like, for old school sites, can we say, near this marker, this happened, that kind of stuff.
I mean, where we have done markers for archaeological sites, we've done things like in the vicinity nearby there, archaeologists have found evidence. And I mean, there are some things that are interpreted. There are other things that, have not been. And again, it depends on the situation. So.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This adds to the richness of it all.
Yeah, no, I mean, there literally are sites all over the county, and we have some, really very nice artifacts. And we just put not an African American exhibit, but we just put a new exhibit over at the government center in the case over there. And when it's our turn again, maybe we could do something that would, be good for this initiative.
Oh, that'd be great.
That'd be wonderful.
Great.
Okay,
well.
There's also collections, just thinking there's also, collections that Megan Lining takes care of we might be able, I don't know, I guess it would be okay to ask her for a list of those.
Sure, that's what I was thinking of course, when I'm saying objects, what objects do we have?
Right.
Those would also be archival.
Other places, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, there are the pews that Barbara mentioned, but there are other things as well. So, yeah, Megan would be able to. I think it would be harder for Megan to find a place to display them, but.
It's acknowledging that they exist. Good.
Yeah, just sort of a list of the collections that she has that are relevant to African American. Like somebody mentioned the Walney workbooks for their enslaved laborers there.
They're named by name, right?
Yeah.
If I remember, right?
Yes,
Carol?
by first names, yeah.
Yeah. So, wow, this is exciting.
Well, I don't have a calendar in front of me. Does anybody know what our second Tuesday, April is?
Second Tuesday is the 13th.
13th.
Okay.
Yes.
And at 2:30?
Yes.
The meeting, the History Commission meeting where we can give them a sense of what we're about is the 7th of April.
Goodness. Unhappy dog there.
Okay, next meeting, April 13th, 2:30. And Mary and I'll collaborate on some minutes from this meeting and send out later.
And the template. And the template.
The last ones were good. I
And the
like the
templates,
last minutes.
So.
Yes, thank you. To the point, we got a lot done.
This was really great.
What? Somebody was talking.
Was that Liz?
Yeah, Liz was talking.
Yeah, I said those were the best minutes I've ever seen, and I apologize for Chloe.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everyone. And Mary and I will be sending some things out to you, and we look forward to seeing you on 13th of April.
And
all right.
Thank Denise. Thank Denise as well, and the fact that she's trying to move along with this kind of activity through DPD. So thank you.
Yeah,
very good.
Thank you.
Denise, can I talk to you about Little Zion after this?
Yeah, we can stay on.
Okay. And just
okay.
If everybody comes up with general resources that apply to everybody in the county, send it to Phyllis and me. We're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Great.
Sounds wonderful. Carol Herrick, I'm going to call you up. I have a question.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.